What's going on, guys? Ryan Nelson here, and today we're talking about the Canon R5 for video. Now, I do have a lot to cover, but I wanted to start off by asking you, what is it about the R5 that you're excited about or most curious about? So go ahead and drop down into the comments and let me know what you're excited about this camera. And while you're down there, go ahead and check out the links in my description. If you're doing an order through Amazon or B&H, you can use either one of those links down there. It's a free way to support this channel. And if you just want to donate and help me create these awesome videos, link in my Patreon is down there in the description as well. Now, I do have to say that after putting this video together, my opinion on this camera has changed a bit. So let's get into these examples and let me show you what it is about this camera that I am excited about. So let's dive right in. So one of the great things about the Canon R5 is you're able to shoot 10-bit C-Log internal in-body without using an external monitor. To start off, this is the 4K DCI all-eye recording. Then moving on to the 4K HQ recording. Immediately you notice the color is a little bit better here. Now that probably has more to do with the light changing ever so slightly between these shots than the actual recording. Now we are getting a smaller file size with the IPB, but you're also getting a lot more detail. Now side by side looking at these, you can tell the 4K HQ is definitely more crisp. I do have to say that's pretty impressive given the file size difference in these two. Now given I am shooting all I versus IPB, which IPB is a smaller file size to start with, but the HQ IPB, just super sharp. So let's go ahead and zoom into 400% on these and really show you what the difference is here. We're definitely getting a lot more crisp image with the 4K HQ. The other major thing I noticed right away is there's a lot less noise in the HQ recording. It's there, but it's smaller, so it's less noticeable. Right off the bat, pretty highly impressed with the 4K HQ image on the R5. So you are able to output 10-bit C-Log over the HDMI port. So recording to an external monitor, in my case, the Atomos Ninja 5, I wanted to compare the difference between the internal and external recordings. Let's take a look at those. So right off the bat here, it feels like the external image is slightly better, but that might be just because it has a little bit more contrast to start off with. Both images are looking really good. They're very, very close. But then if we pause this and zoom in to 400%, you can tell that the internal image is actually a little bit better. It's a little bit crisper. There's definitely more detail there, and it's just a solid image. So I have to say, fairly impressed with the internal recording on this camera. So the R5 does offer many different ways to record video in the camera. You can shoot in normal 8-bit mode, you can shoot in 10-bit C-Log, or you can shoot in 10-bit HDR PQ. Now all of these do have different color sciences to them, so definitely do your color card, but all of them do look slightly different. Now if we zoom into 400% to see how much detail we're picking up on each of these, I have to say the C-Log image definitely looks like the softer image, but also the least contrasty. If you look at this crack coming down the middle here, it looks like you've got more detail in there as to where the other two, it looks definitely a bit contrastier. And then just out of curiosity, let's drop in the 4K HQ in the middle. Definitely a lot sharper on that one, a lot better than the regular 4K image. And just because it has the capability, I wanted to take a look at the 4K HQ versus the 8K RAW image out of the R5. It looks like you are getting a bit more detail shooting 8K RAW, but you're also getting a much larger file size with the 8K RAW versus 4K HQ. So unless you need absolutely every detail in there, which the 4K HQ is very, very close, I don't see much reason to shoot the 8K RAW. But still, it's pretty impressive that you can shoot 8K RAW internal to a mirrorless camera body. One of the big draws to the R5 is its ability to shoot 8K video. Now, personally, that wasn't a huge selling feature for me, but because it has it, let's take a look at how that compares to the 4K HQ, which is basically a downsampled 8K image. So right off the bat, here's the 8K, and here is the 4K. Other than the shadow shifting ever so slightly, there is Zero difference right off the bat between these two. The major thing you notice is the file size difference. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Again, not noticing a huge difference in these two. I'm thinking the 8K might be like 5% clearer, and that may just be my brain telling me that it's clearer because it's 8K versus 4K. This is a pretty solid image. And just for the heck of it, let's zoom in to 400% on the 4K and 200% on the 8K. Both, I have to say, are still really clear for having zoomed in so much. In the shadows, I'm not really even noticing any noise here. So just overall, a very solid image on this. I do feel like the 8K is still like 5, maybe 7% sharper. So on either of these, you do have a lot of room for zooming in, cropping, rotating, editing just a little bit. The R5 does have movie crop built into it, which actually crops the sensor and gets you a little bit more out of your lenses. My question is, if you switch into the movie crop mode, are you sacrificing quality to get a little bit more on the zoom range? Both at roughly the same zoom. Right off the bat, looking at these, I think they're both pretty clear. And then zoomed in at 400% on both of these. Surprisingly, the movie crop is actually the clearer image. On the regular 4K image, we are getting a little bit of striping on the stripes in the road, as to where on the 4K movie crop, it's actually pretty clear. Everything else looks maybe just as sharp, if not a tiny bit sharper. So using the 4K movie crop, you're not losing any detail there. In fact, you may be gaining a little bit more. So now let's compare a movie crop versus a 4K HQ image. My theory on this is it's going to be the same. So here's the 4K HQ full frame, and here's the 4K HQ movie crop. As a side note, you can't shoot movie crop with 4K HQ, it just doesn't work. So side by side here at 160% and 100% respectively, it looks like we're getting pretty much the same image here. I don't see a whole lot of difference. Very close, very similar, if not the same. But if we zoom into 650% and 400% respectively, just to get the same framing on here, you do notice that the movie crop is still actually sharper than the 4K HQ image, which I was actually expecting these to be the same. So I'm actually pretty impressed with the movie crop on the R5. 4K HQ is also really impressive. Either of these, I don't think you're gonna go wrong with either of them. Even though you're at 650% on the 4K HQ, 400% on the 4K movie crop. Both of these still pretty crisp, pretty clear, highly impressed with the 4K recording on this camera. Another big selling feature for the R5 is its ability to shoot 4K 120. Now, while I am excited to have this tool in my toolbox, I don't rely on it to shoot projects. I have to say, I do think shooting everything in slow motion at 120 frames per second and putting it together, calling it a video. Okay, before I say this, I know you're gonna hate me, and I have done this in the past. I'm guilty of it. But doing that is just lazy filmmaking. While I am excited to have it, I'm not gonna be using it all the time. It's not a tool I'm gonna rely on a lot. Look, a hammer is a great tool, but you can't build an entire house with just a hammer. So let's take a look at these 120 examples. I'm gonna preface this by saying I'm not a runner, okay? Just not a runner. But running through the desert, sitting on a tripod, 120 FPS. I don't really see a lot of banding. I don't see a lot of the things that I've noticed with high frame rate cameras in the past. Now, apart from the bad jumping, this does appear to be a pretty solid image. So you can use an SD card to record video on the R5 unless you want to shoot 4K 120 or 8K. You are going to need the CFexpress card to record either of those. I'll link the card I'm using down below in the description. It is a less expensive one, but so far it's been working really well for me. Recording to an external SSD was something I really enjoyed shooting on my Blackmagic camera. I was hoping that you could do this on the Canon R5, but it appears that you can't. I've tried. It just doesn't recognize it as a hard drive. Another big selling feature for the R5 is the in-body image stabilization. I keep wanting to call it internal, in-body image, but that's not right. It's just IBIS, in-body image stabilization. This turned out to be a really great feature to have in a camera for a project that I did right after picking up the R5. So it was perfect timing. Now this is just straight up handheld, walking through a canyon somewhere I've never actually been before, so I didn't even know the terrain all that well. A little wobbly at the beginning, but that's because I was just putting the camera up to my eye, walking, following these two. A little wobbly on the side, but very minimal. I mean, literally, I'm just holding this camera to my eye and walking forward. Terrain does get a little uneven, so it does get a little wonky, but there is no way I could have gotten this shot with another camera without some sort of IBIS. And then another fun shot, I was just wheeling around these two, trying to get a pretty cool shot. Again, straight handheld, just trying to focus on these guys. Autofocus worked spot on this. IBIS is a little wonky in a couple of spots, but overall, incredibly smooth. So just a really nice job they've done with this. But these are a couple of shots that I definitely could not have gotten without a gimbal or IBIS. Now the autofocus, more specifically the eye detection on the R5, is just supposed to be on point. So to demonstrate this, I'm gonna run back here and do the eye test. It's on my eye right now. No, it's on this one. I can see it. I can see it right there. So, okay, I'm gonna run back here. And I could see what was on my eye as I was running up. How's that? Did that focus on me real quick? I don't know. It looks like it might have. It's kind of bouncing back and forth right now between the face and the eye. Face, eye. Although this R5 I noticed has been a lot better about picking up sunglasses than the R. The R really sucked when you had sunglasses on. So for low light autofocus, this camera is actually doing really good. I can tell right now it's locked onto my eye with the eye detection on. As I move forward, it's still continuing to track. I am walking a little bit closer to a light, so of course it's gonna have a little bit more light to focus on. I'm getting a little closer. It knows exactly where to look. It's still locked onto my eye. Even as I move around this frame, this really dark, underexposed frame, I'm shooting about 1600 ISO, 50th of a second, f3.5, I believe this is. But as I'm moving around, I can still tell that this is locked onto my eye. It's still picking me up even in this highly dark, this very dark environment. The eye detect is still working very good in this low light, underexposed image. So good job, Canon. I like it. No. Wait. Let me elaborate on that a little bit more. So I have used this camera in a few different situations. One day in particular, I was out filming a documentary. I was using this camera all day, recording on and off, several minute clips, short clips here, high frame rates there. I never once had an overheat warning. I never once had it actually overheat. Used it later on that day to record an hour-long interview. Again, no issues with it. I haven't had any issues with it. So no, I haven't had it overheat. I've noticed that the files from this camera really don't play back all that well in Premiere Pro. I can't really say for sure about DaVinci or Final Cut, but in Premiere, I just simply go in, I make proxies of all of the video recordings, and then it plays back pretty well after that. Pretty easy solution. A little bit more of a time suck, but it's a pretty easy solution. I was actually kind of excited about recording a really high quality 4K and then recording a smaller proxy to make this process a little bit faster, but it turns out that you can only record proxies if you are shooting 8K RAW. Kind of a bummer, but not the end of the world. The only minor issue that I've had with this camera so far is exporting to my Atomos recorders, my monitors. Every once in a while, the playback just gets wonky and it starts playing at about 12 frames per second. And it will also record at 12 frames per second on the external. It's fine on the internal, but it plays back and records wonky on the external. I haven't quite figured out what's going on there yet, but that's honestly the only issue I've had so far with the R5. To start wrapping this up, just in case you're curious, this studio portion I am recording on the R5, 4K fine, which is 4K HQ, and IPB mode. So just for your reference, that's what this recording is. Other things that I just wanted to touch on real quick, I'm a big fan of the movie self-timer built into this camera. So just like when you do a photo self-timer, you can do a 2 or a 10-second self-timer. I found that just saves a little bit of data when you hit record and you run around, gives you a moment to sit here, take a breath, and get ready. Another thing I'm excited about is the zebras in this camera. You can turn them on and off pretty quick. I've set a custom button for that. It's been very helpful in brighter environments when I don't have access to the viewfinder for a particular angle, or just in plain bright environments where I just can't quite see the histogram. One more thing I've been pretty excited about this camera is the custom buttons. I've set so many of these custom buttons to do different things. I handed this camera to one of my friends and he was like, I don't even know what to do with this. These buttons are doing weird things. That's because I set them to my preference. And that's been pretty nice to have. So as I said in the beginning, my opinion on the R5 has changed. And honestly, it has changed for the better. I was not expecting this camera to be this good. I was expecting it to be quite good, but not quite this good. So I'm really, really pleased with this camera. I'm very excited about it. If you buy one, I know you will be too. Even if you're not buying one and you're just saving up for one, be excited about it because it is a phenomenal camera for both photo and video. Talked about the photos, I'll link that right there. All right, well, I'm sure I'm forgetting something. There's so much to talk about with this camera. I know I am forgetting something. I don't even know what it is at this point. But I tell you what, guys, if you like this video, found it useful, helpful, informative, anything like that, support me on Patreon. That's down below in the description. If you can't do that at the moment, that's cool too. Go ahead and just hit the thumbs up button down there. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and I will see you guys next time.